Welcome to the Spelling Bee Ninja podcast. We're thrilled you're here, dedicated to enriching your mind with knowledge. Our mission is to foster curiosity, encourage critical thinking, and build a community of learners. If you're passionate about education and eager to explore fascinating topics, make sure you subscribe for free educational content that empowers you to think deeply and learn continuously. Let's dive into today's lesson. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning is a powerful tool that helps us apply general rules to specific situations and draw logical conclusions based on true premises. The essence of deductive reasoning lies in its structure. If the initial statements, known as premises, are true, the conclusion derived from them must also be true. Let's explore how this method works, starting with the foundational concepts. Deductive reasoning begins with a broad statement, or hypothesis, and narrows down to a specific conclusion. For instance, let's say we have the general premise that all mammals are warm-blooded. If we then provide a specific premise stating that a dolphin is a mammal, we can logically conclude that a dolphin is warm-blooded. This relationship is a crucial aspect of deduction. Famous detective Sherlock Holmes, created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, used deductive reasoning in solving mysteries, stating, "When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth." This highlights how deduction helps clarify the path to truth when we consider the reliability of our premises. Next, let's discuss the structure of deductive arguments. A deductive argument comprises premises that provide support, leading to a conclusion. The reliability of the conclusion follows the soundness of the premises. Consider this example: Premise 1 states that all humans are mortal, and Premise 2 states that Socrates is a human. The conclusion logically drawn here is that Socrates is mortal. This classic form of reasoning, known as syllogism, has been studied for centuries, dating back to Aristotle, the father of logic. Aristotle formalized deductive reasoning into a system that remains fundamental today. A valid deductive argument must have its conclusion already implied within its premises. When we examine deductive reasoning closely, we come across the crucial distinction between validity and truth. Validity refers to the logical structure of an argument, while truth relates to the factual accuracy of the premises. An argument is considered valid if the conclusion must follow from the premises. However, an argument is sound only when it is both valid and has true premises. For example, consider a statement that all birds can fly. This is factually incorrect, as it does not hold true for all birds like penguins. Here, while the conclusion follows logically, it is unsound because the premise is false. Thus, we see how important it is to distinguish between these two concepts when constructing arguments. Moving forward, let's take a look at syllogisms in depth. A syllogism is a common form of deductive reasoning that consists of two premises and a conclusion. The typical structure involves a major premise, which is a general statement, a minor premise, which establishes a specific fact, and a conclusion that emerges from both. For example, if we say all mammals are vertebrates, major premise, and all dogs are mammals, minor premise, we can conclude that all dogs are vertebrates. Interestingly, there are 256 possible forms of categorical syllogisms, but only 24 of these forms are valid. The unearthing of logical fallacies is essential to understanding deductive reasoning. Mistakes can occur even in careful reasoning. A common error is known as affirming the consequent. For instance, consider the reasoning: if it rains, then the ground will be wet. If we observe that the ground is wet, we might incorrectly conclude that it rained. However, the ground could be wet for several reasons, such as sprinklers or a broken water pipe. Thus, this reasoning is invalid. Another error occurs when denying the antecedent. For example, using the same rain premise: if it rains, the ground will be wet. If it does not rain, one might conclude that the ground is not wet. This again overlooks other possibilities. Being aware of these errors fosters critical thinking skills. We find ourselves in situations where we must apply hypothetical syllogisms, conditional statements that follow an if-then format. The pattern is simple yet powerful: if A, then B; if B, then C; therefore, if A, then C. Essentially, this reasoning connects different conditions and can be applied in various scenarios. For example, if a student studies hard, then they understand the material. If they understand the material, they will pass the exam. So we conclude that if a student studies hard, they will pass the exam. This chain of reasoning is foundational in computer programming, where algorithms often consist of such logical constructs. Additionally, the rules of deduction hinge on modus ponens and modus tollens, which are fundamental principles in deductive logic. Modus ponens states that if P implies Q, and P is true, then Q must also be true. Meanwhile, modus tollens expresses that if P implies Q, and Q is false, then P must be false. Recognizing these rules is essential for building sound arguments. For example, in modus ponens, if it is raining, then the grass is wet, it is raining, thus the grass is wet. In modus tollens, if it is raining, then the grass is wet, the grass is not wet, hence it is not raining. This logical clarity is often utilized in fields like law and scientific research. An invaluable method to test deductive arguments is the counterexample method. By envisioning a scenario where the premises are true, but the conclusion is false, we can identify the argument's validity. For instance, if we state that all teachers are kind, and John is a teacher, concluding that John is kind may not be valid if we consider counterexamples. Societal experiences showcase a wide range of characters, demonstrating that while the conclusion might be accurate in one case, it doesn't ensure the truth of the general claim. This process is crucial in scientific inquiry when researchers probe theories for fallibility. As we apply deductive reasoning in our everyday lives, it manifests in numerous contexts. Lawyers employ deductive reasoning in the courtroom, establishing legal principles and applying them to specific cases, drawing conclusions about guilt or innocence. Similarly, in healthcare, doctors rely on deductive reasoning to diagnose illnesses based on observed symptoms, while scientists utilize deduction to test their hypotheses against observable outcomes. In essence, these practices illustrate how deductive reasoning becomes an integral part of decision-making processes in real life. Lastly, mastering deductive reasoning is a skill that requires practice. We can sharpen our critical thinking by scrutinizing the premises in everyday conversations. Are they true? Do conclusions logically follow, or are there assumptions that might skew our reasoning? Let's ponder an example. All my friends who study hard get good grades. I study hard, therefore, I will get good grades. This conclusion relies heavily on the premise that all students who study hard necessarily achieve good grades, which may not hold true universally. By acknowledging the complexity in reasoning and considering alternate factors, you can significantly enhance your deductive reasoning skills. Chess players frequently exemplify deductive reasoning as they assess possible moves and predict outcomes many steps ahead. Grandmasters can often strategize up to 20 moves ahead. Engaging in exercises, like analyzing arguments, spotting fallacies, and making connections across various principles, ultimately sharpens your logical thinking. Today, we explored the essential components of deductive reasoning, starting from its foundations to its application in real-life scenarios. We discussed how premises lead to sound conclusions and distinguished between validity and truth. We examined syllogisms, common logical fallacies, and crucial deductive principles. By understanding and practicing these concepts, we empower ourselves to think critically and make well-reasoned decisions. Deductive reasoning is not just an academic exercise, but a valuable skill applicable across various fields. Thank you for joining us on this journey through deductive reasoning. We hope you found this episode insightful and engaging. Remember, the more you practice these skills, the sharper your logical thinking will become. If you loved today's content, be sure to subscribe and join our community for more enriching educational experiences. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep growing.